Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I have Michael Zipursky with us. Michael is the CEO of Consulting Success. He's advised organizations like Financial Times, Dow Jones, RBC, and he's helped Panasonic launch new products into global markets. But more importantly, he's helped over 450 consultants from around the world in over 75 industries add 6 and 7 figures to their annual revenues. Over 35,000 consultants read his weekly consulting newsletter. Michael is also the author of the Amazon bestseller, Act Now: How Successful Consultants Thrive During Chaos and Uncertainty, and The Elite Consulting Mind and Consulting Success, the book. Michael, it's so great to have you on the show.
Hey, Stephan, great to be with you. Always enjoy our conversations.
Yep, likewise. And I am just super grateful to have you on the show. I know I was on your show, and I really enjoyed that. That was a little while ago now, but yeah, we've been talking about having you on for a while, and finally we pulled it off. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's start off by talking about why consulting. Why not create like a product company or a agency or some sort of big e-commerce type business, something that's more scalable. Consultancies seem not very scalable, and I speak from experience because I've been a SEO consultant for a very long time. Although I do have a team and we do service more clients than I could possibly handle on my own, it's still a very hard to scale business. So yeah, why pick that?
I mean, I think one of the things is risk aversion to a degree. Running a consulting or services-based business doesn't require a lot to get started. So I've been now consulting for 21 years. And when I first got into the consulting world, I was just entering university. And I didn't have a lot of resources to put behind what my cousin Sam, who's my business partner to this day, what we were trying to accomplish. And we did run a few kind of agency types of models. In those early days, we first had a web development and design company. Then our second company was more around visual branding and design and some marketing. And then from there, it went more into lead generation. And then about 10 years into that journey, we realized, hey, let's try and figure something out that we can do online as a way to allow us to travel and live and work anywhere that we wanted to, because for us, that was a big deal and something that we'd always wanted to be able to do. And so we started Consulting Success, which was a way to really share our stories of running consulting businesses, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But back to your question, really, I think profitability from day one or as quickly as possible, less risk, less, not holding inventory. To me, these just seem like things for someone back, 20 years ago or so, who wanted to be able to live and work anywhere and just not have a lot of mental inventory or physical inventory. The consulting business really resonated. And I think the other big thing is I've always, even though early on, I didn't recognize this, I've always kind of been a teacher. I've enjoyed teaching and working and helping others and listening and providing different perspectives and recommendations. And so that just lends itself very well to the consulting industry.
Right. How do you show this teaching expertise in your business? Like, are you producing courses? Are you doing group coaching, individual one-on-one coaching? Or I'm curious what this looks like.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the progression. I mean, I guess about 13 years now, where we've been doing this. And it started off, Consulting Success was just a blog. There was no monetization. There's no real plan on how to make that work. But we just thought, let's share our stories. Let's share kind of what's working, what isn't working, and hopefully we can help make an impact and help people to succeed. And we had feedback from the community that started to build as we put out this free content saying, hey, these are great articles, but do you guys have a course? And we said, nope, we don't, but we can create one. And so we created a course for people sharing how you can, go from being an employee or in the corporate world to creating a successful consulting business. And we had then clients in that program said, okay, this is, really great. I've achieved $100,000 a year. I'm making great progress. I'm feeling much more focused and clear on what I need to do. Do you offer coaching? And we said, nope, but we can create a coaching program. And so we started a coaching program, and it began just doing one-on-one coaching, which later we looked at and said, yeah, this is not scalable. We can only really make so much of an impact. And so we then structured a coaching program where we could work with more than one person at one time. And then fast forward to today, where we have what we call the Clarity Coaching Program. And we've now had actually about 500 consultants or more go through that program. And we have coaches that have been trained and certified through our framework. And so we're able to work with consultants all around the world in many different industries and do it in a way that is much more scalable and enjoyable for everyone involved.
Oh, very cool. That's a great progression. And certification seems like a good evolution from courses, because then you can not only charge more, but you can deliver something that is a lot more tangible for somebody. It's kind of amorphous to provide like some training on something, and then somebody feels more skilled or more resourceful. But if they actually have that stamp of approval from you, and that is worth something, like it's a standard that's a bar that is set quite high, then they might get business that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten, and maybe even lead flow. Do you have like a directory or something like that for?
No, I mean, for right now, this is really just for the coaches that work in our program to teach the consulting success framework to clients of the Clarity Coaching Program.
Got it.
You know, down the road, it might be something that we think about in terms of actually developing a more structured kind of certification program for other consultants or other people in the industry. But a little while ago, we got really clear that we wanted to bring greater structure to our actual program, and one way to be able to teach and have a greater impact on more people was to really standardize where we were seeing the best practices, where we were seeing the greatest results. And so what we actually developed was 2 physical books, which we call the Consulting Success Framework. And so every coach that ends up working with our clients in that program, which I'm still involved in and working directly with clients as well, they go through learning and training on those 2 Consulting Success Framework books as part of our kind of training, protocol and program before they can actually work with clients. And we just found that that's been very important for us in terms of scaling, because it's not just a whole bunch of loose ideas or materials. Everything's documented, it has a very specific order and a progression, and that helps us to ensure that our clients are achieving consistent results as they go through the process.
Gotcha. Some folks will call it an Ascension Model, where you go from this to that to this to that, and then you're just working your way up that ladder. And as you work your way up, then you become more profitable, you generate more revenue, you become more scalable, you have more team, and you become less part of the day-to-day delivery and more of the kind of owner and visionary. So is that kind of your model as well? Provides that kind of ascension?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a little bit different. I mean, if we look at the Ascension Model, I mean, this has now been 13 years, so it's been a very slow progression. If you look at it, it's not like buy this book, and then get this course and then get this coaching. I mean, we do see that progression, although it's not necessarily always intentional. We have people who listen to the Consulting Success podcast or read, one of the books that we put out there, and then might buy and come into our Momentum online course, which is for people who are newer in the consulting world, and then get into the Clarity Coaching Program. But we also have a lot of people who have been consultants for many years. They have a team of 5 or 10 or 30 people, and they're doing $10 or $15 million a year, as well as others who are just out of the corporate world. They've had an executive position and they want personal support and coaching, so they go straight into the Clarity Coaching Program. So it's not that we have one of these kind of, and I'll call it internet marketing, very clear, buy this lower price thing and then a little bit higher and a little bit higher. We don't move people through there. We put out just a lot of content and ideas, and then we just want to meet people where they are. And so we always encourage people to reach out, to have a conversation, and then we can see how we can best support them. But I think the latter part of what you mentioned, Stephan, in terms of that progression, maybe internally, where started off that I was doing almost everything in terms of content creation and working one-on-one with clients. Certainly over time, what I've realized, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of go through this mindset development as well, is where you initially feel like you don't want to take on more risk or more structure or more infrastructure that you need in terms of teams, and that's why you want to be let's say a solo consultant or an entrepreneur, because you don't want all of those pieces moving around. You want kind of simplicity. But what I've actually realized over the years that in order to, once you get to a certain stage, to create more freedom, more flexibility, and to spend time working on the areas that you truly can add the greatest value and that you enjoy the most, that's actually where a team does become really powerful. And that's actually where having SOPs and structured systems and processes allows you to not only kind of buy some of your time back, but it allows you to really start working on the business or kind of over the business, not just in it. And that's where the real strategy or the real enjoyment comes, because you can then make a much bigger impact, because now you have time to actually create new ideas or new trainings or new approaches that have a bigger impact on your clients. Whereas if you're only just doing the work yourself all the time and you don't have that ability to kind of take a step back, it's very hard to be able to make greater developments, because your capacity is reached very quickly.
Yeah. Dan Sullivan calls this the rugged individualist, where they're wearing many hats, trying to do everything themselves, and they burn themselves out eventually.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, rub up against that. And I remember early in my career as a consultant, I was very against the idea of hiring an assistant or hiring anybody, like bringing anyone on, because number one, I told myself it's going to be money out of my pocket. And I didn't recognize that I was actually losing money every day and every hour that I was working on low value tasks. So shifting that to bringing somebody on, not as an expense, but actually as an investment was very, kind of transformational in my development as an entrepreneur. And the other part that I think a lot of people run up against is, well, it's faster for me to do it myself. So why would I try and bring somebody else on if I can just do it myself, because I'm so good, clients are hiring me and my knowledge and my expertise. But what I always push back on when I speak to clients about this is, name me one very successful consulting firm that is well known where the founder is doing all the work. Like, it doesn't, go to McKinsey and like, is the CEO of McKinsey doing all the consulting? No, I mean, it doesn't, you typically won't see that. As the business scales and grows, the founder, the owner, you have to find a way to extract your expertise and the value that you can create for the marketplace, because when you do that, you're actually going to be able to make a bigger impact on those that you truly want to serve and add value.
Yeah, for sure. It makes total sense. And yet a lot of folks put unnecessary roadblocks in their path. They paint themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what inspired you to create all of this content? You are prolific with content, a blog, a podcast, all of the resources that you've made available. It's just pretty extensive. How much content are we talking about here?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we probably have close to 1,000 articles on our site, which I'm sure you'll tell me, Stephan, isn't necessarily a great thing for SEO, right? Focus more on really good quality pieces. So, but for us, yeah, I mean, we've always, from day one, I think it's that teacher mindset. Even if it wasn't intentional, it's just lead through demonstration. And when I now break it down, what I've identified is there's many different ways to demonstrate value to the marketplace. And people often ask, like, how can you demonstrate value to people that you don't have a relationship with yet? And because of course, if you're working with a client, you can demonstrate value by doing great work. If you receive a referral or an introduction, right, then you can also, there's a kind of inherent value being transferred through that introduction or referral. But if you don't have those things, how do you actually demonstrate value? And if you're engaging in conversation with a prospective buyer, you can also demonstrate value by asking really great, meaningful, kind of deep, penetrating, or thoughtful questions that get the other party to really think and see things they haven't considered before. But aside from that, if you aren't actually talking to someone that you want to have a relationship with, how do you demonstrate value? And that's where I think content shines. And because you actually have the ability to demonstrate value to somebody who you've never met before. And in doing so, you don't have to tell them how great you are. You can just simply show your expertise, through that content. And whether it's video or audio or, some other, a book or a short article, many different formats.
Newsletter.
We try to do. What was that?
Or your newsletter. You send that every week.
Yes, exactly. Newsletter. I mean, it could be anything. I think, one thing that I learned from Perry Marshall many years ago is this idea that different people consume content in different formats. And so some people are going to resonate better with an article. Others are going to resonate better with a podcast. Others are going to resonate better with a video. And so what we've tried to kind of create is this content in many different formats because people will consume in different formats, and sometimes an article might strike them and resonate more, and other times a video will do better. And so what we're just trying to do, because everything that we do, Stephan, is driven with the long-term mindset. It's based on relationships. The company that we started in Vancouver and I later went over to Japan and opened up a branch office for was called Kankei Culture, and Kankei is the Japanese word for relationship. Then my next company, which was a lead generation company for professional services firms, I called it Religy, and Religy stands for relationship strategy. So everything that we do is just about relationships when we think long term, and I think that drives us to just lead with good quality content that we hope and believe will inspire, educate, and motivate, and get people to become more successful, even if they don't want to become clients. And I give this example of one client that in the last kind of year or two reached out, became a client, came into our Clarity coaching program, and he told us, he said, "You know what? I've actually been consuming your content for 10 years." And I was blown away. And I recorded like a little podcast episode about this because, or maybe it was a video. People might look at that and go like, "Well, your marketing sucks, guys. Like, why would it take somebody 10 years to become a client?" But I looked at that and I was like, "We're doing great. If we were able to keep somebody engaged over 10 years, it means that we had so many opportunities to stop following up or to stop creating value, but we didn't. And when the time was right for him, he then reached out. He became a client. He's now been a long-term, client. It wasn't just for a week or a month. And we really value that relationship. So that's our approach to everything that we do. And so we just continue to put out more and more content.
That's awesome. I'm curious, how do you measure success in terms of relationships? Is there a metric or an OKR for that?
We look at certain things. So of course, we're looking at our overall lead generation, right? So how many leads are we generating? How many sales conversations or enrollment conversations are we having for our programs? That gives us a sense. The other is even in the conversations that we have or through the different channels, whether it's LinkedIn, pretty much every day I get a message from somebody on LinkedIn just saying thanks for the podcast or the articles. Like the content has resonated with them. And so even if they don't become clients, that's totally fine. And that is we measure that as part of success. Also in the conversations that we do have with people, we listen to what they're saying, and oftentimes they'll say, "Oh yeah, no, I've read all of your books. I've listened to every podcast episode." We had people that say, I binged, listened from, I was driving from X to Y and just kept listening. That for us, it's like a sign of success. And then the other things that we do look at is in our programs, when people are coming through, we have two different phases of our Clarity coaching program, and we look at the percentage of people that go from phase 1 to phase 2 as a way of, are we able to continue delivering value for people? And so we look at those things, but overall, we don't have, it's interesting to kind of think about, is there a way to develop a relationship metric? And, can you have something that would tell you how you're doing? And that's not something that we've really formalized, but we do have many different inputs in the business that we talk about and our weekly team meeting that we'll review as part of our scorecard.
Yeah. Are you familiar with NPS, Net Promoter Score?
I am. Yeah.
What do you think about it?
We've never used it. I'm familiar with it, but no, we haven't used it. Do you think that would be something that would really connect to or help us create a connection to how well you're doing in relationship, or is it more about just how people feel about the brand? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm mixed. I had my first experience with Net Promoter Score at Covario, which had acquired my previous company. And I thought it was better than nothing. I thought it was good. But then I interviewed Jared Spool on my other podcast on Marketing Speak. And he's a world-renowned usability and user experience expert. And he just railed on NPS. He just said it was the stupidest thing, and he gave some really compelling reasons, and then he explained what you could do instead. And he swayed my opinion for sure. So it's better than nothing. If you have nothing to track the client or customer sentiment, NPS, but you could do better. So listen to that Jared Spool interview if you have a chance.
Yeah, I guess we do have our own format of that, which is in both of our main programs, both Momentum and Clarity. We do send out surveys to people, and we have standardized questions, and we'll look at that feedback and based on that, engage with that customer or client and look at how we can make improvements. But yeah, we're not using a formalized scoring kind of metric like an NPS.
Yeah. The only question that matters in NPS as far as referability and the value of that client relationship is how likely are you to refer us, our company, consultancy, to friends, colleagues, etc. And anything below an 8 is no bueno. A 9 or a 10, those are highly referable. Those are advocates. But 7 and 8 are neutral. And 6 and below are detractors. You think, 6 out of 10, that's not too bad. No, they actually don't like you.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting, right? Because there's a whole then discussion around, well, what do you then do, right? So let's say that somebody is a 7, right? What steps can you take? And I'm sure are there any resources for listeners? And even, I'd love to know what if somebody is, and we haven't done this, so we don't know where we would score, but let's say somebody is at a 6 or a 7, what would you tell them to go and read or to learn about so they could work on improving that?
Yeah, so if their average NPS score is a 6 or a 7 or not a 9 or a 10, I would say learn from Joey Coleman. So you could start by listening to my interview of Joey on this podcast. He's the author of Never Lose a Customer Again. He has a 100-day onboarding methodology for surprising and delighting your new clients so that they'll stick around. And even if it's a client that's been with you for several years, you can't assume that they're just going to stick around forever because you might not have made it sticky enough for them, right? So I would say this book and his stuff, his intellectual property is relevant for everybody, even if you've worked with the same clients for 10 years.
Yeah, no, it's a great suggestion because we do have many long-term clients that have been with us, 6 years, or I think that's probably our longest in terms of our program, which is almost from when we started the first version of that program. But yeah, you never know. And so getting some insight into where you do stand and how you can make improvements. I mean, for me, that's actually one of the most exciting things about entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur and running a business is that there's always room to improve. It doesn't matter how good you are, how big you are, whatever the metric is that you're using for success, there's always room for improvement and always mistakes that are going to be made and then learn from. And to me, that's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. Cool. So I'm curious, how much time do you put into your weekly newsletter? For me, I have this Thursday 3 newsletter that I have my team write. It looks like I've written it, but I just gave them access to a tool called Pocket, which is a bookmarking application.
Right.
So they know what I'm bookmarking, and they use that as fodder to write content on my behalf. So it's like 3 different things. So that's the Thursday 3. Something that intrigued me, something that inspired me, and something that challenged me. And they nail it every time pretty much. And I do a quick review before it gets published. But yeah, I extricated myself a long time ago from writing my own newsletter. Do you write your own newsletter?
Yeah. No, I don't. So very similar to you, Savo on our team does a great job of it. And so we have kind of 2. There's one main newsletter, but when people come into our world, what often happens is they'll grab our consulting blueprint, and when they come into that, there's a series of emails, almost like an autoresponder, right? That takes them deep into my early days of building a consulting business. I tell stories from when I was in Japan and on the bullet train and all kinds of situations to illustrate challenges and successes and lessons learned, and people really love because it's very story based. So that was written a while back, but I think there's some really good stuff in there. But the actual newsletter that we send out every week, that's really where we're featuring our most recent podcast episode or videos that we put up or new articles, or we also conduct several studies every year where we look into different aspects of pricing for consultants or lifestyle for consultants, marketing, different best practices or areas of interest for the community, the consulting community. kind of at large, and we do a survey and then a whole detailed study on that. So we'll share those as well through the newsletter, and that's really what the weekly newsletter is about.
Nice. I'm intrigued to hear more about the studies. Do you do those internally, or do you commission those?
We do it internally, yeah. So, I mean, the nice thing in having a sizable list of about 30, I think now we're about 35,000 plus people, give or take, maybe 36,000, is that when we send out an email, we set up the survey and we're asking a whole bunch of different questions, right? We know we're going to get a pretty strong response to that. And so that gives us a lot of insights that we can then look at, and using a tool like SurveyMonkey, or there's, I'm sure, a lot of great ones out there. It's what we like to do is not just explore and share the answer, that's just to the question. We want to look at like the correlation. So if someone says, referrals are my number one marketing channel, what we want to see is, well, is that the same answer for somebody who's brand new to consulting as opposed to somebody that's already generating, $1 million or more per year? Or when somebody says, I meditate or I journal, well, is that somebody that is like, how successful from an income perspective is person A, person B? And so we like to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the data and then try and provide feedback for people. And that is then turned into a very, pretty extensive article with pulling in a lot of that data, and then we share. I think there's a lot more that we could do with those studies, but again, it's just a goal for us as a way to provide more value and a bit of benchmarking for the consulting industry.
That's very cool. You do so much, just free information, free value. I'm sure you've earned a lot of business karma over the years.
I would like to think so. I mean, that's just how we roll, Stephan. It's put it out there and do our best to support the community and add value. And we do see that from or hear that consistently from people. It's, they like the focus and just the quality of and thought behind what we do. I mean, we're a family-run business. Sam's my cousin. Our fathers are actually twins. Telling this kind of a story of how we grew up, and we have a little mini documentary on our site. If you go to the story section of Consulting Success, you can kind of see we tell our stories. But every interaction that we have with our clients or the community, I mean, we really do think about it in terms of a family and how we can help people, and we want to be approachable regardless of our size and how we continue to grow. And we like to think that it pays off, or that it's creating a benefit to both parties, right? To the people that we want to serve, and also helping our business as well.
When did you first know that you were going to launch a business with your cousin?
So probably, I mean, I was still in high school. I started our first business just coming out of high school into, well, actually it was college. I did a 2-year college and then 1 year in Japan, and then finished another, then a university. So I did a few different programs. But it was, we started talking about that when I was in high school. We were actually on a trip in Vietnam. In the north of Vietnam. This was 7 years after Vietnam had opened to tourists or to the outside world. And I remember I brought a book about how to start a music label, a record business, because my cousin Sam's always been to music. He was a DJ, made music, and I've always kind of thought more about marketing and business and communications. And so we even created a name for our label. As we were reading this book and talking about it during our trip, we never created a label. We didn't do anything with that music business idea, but that was kind of the start of us exploring how we might create something together. But our first business was called Fingertip Media, and it was a web design development business back in the day when people were doing Flash websites and all that kind of stuff. I think it was maybe even before then. But it was a really great experience. I mean, it taught us a lot because we didn't have. Some people say, like, Michael, do you have a lot of formal training around becoming a consultant? I said, no. I mean, I educated myself. I read a lot of books in my kind of later years of high school. I never actually read a book until I was probably 15 years old. I mean, like, not a single book, but something switched and kind of flipped inside. And then I started to read a lot and became very interested in business and the world. And so as I was studying, we just were applying what we were learning. And when you do that, I mean, it's such a powerful thing, right? When you don't try and think that you know everything, when you just are open to consuming and to learning and then applying, you learn very quickly what works and what doesn't work. And what we found, and one thing I tell a lot of consultants who are earlier stage, because even if you've been, for example, a VP of AT&T, which we had a client, so this kind of rings as one example, they come into the world of consulting and they have a lot of expertise, but they know nothing about building a consulting business. But what I often tell clients is it doesn't matter, how many years necessarily like you have experience consulting, you have expertise. And if you have expertise, it means that there's a reason why you're talking to the person on the other side of the table, regardless of how big that company is or how old, the age difference or level of success or income, you have expertise. And so as long as you can add value for someone, then you have a place, you kind of have a seat at the table. And so even for myself, when I was in my early 20s, I was consulting again with companies like Panasonic and Dow Jones and others. And it's like, what right do you have to be there, Michael? You're just a young kid. Well, I had something that those companies didn't have, right? I had perspective and insight into North American and English speaking markets. And there I was in Japan, and they had, a lot more than I did in many respects, but they were looking for a unique insight that I had. So that's what I'm always kind of looking at from a consulting perspective is, it doesn't matter your age or all these other things. It's just about, can you provide value? Can you help somebody to solve a problem or to reach their desired state faster? And if you have that, then you have, the starting ingredients for success.
Yeah. I'm curious what happened when you were 15 and you just flipped and you started becoming a reader like that.
Yeah.
What happened?
I'm smiling because I kind of had a sense, Stephan, my intuition was kind of going off that you might ask that question. So I'll tell you what it was. I'm going to back up just a moment to give you a bit more of the story. I was born in Toronto at about 2.5 years of age. My parents moved us to Israel. So I lived in Israel for about 4.5 years. It's where I grew up. I was surrounded by a lot of different cultures and languages and people. I then came back to Canada, this time to Vancouver. Felt like a complete outsider. I did not speak English. I was surrounded by, this time, a lot of different people. My high school, I was like the one white kid in a whole kind of area of kids from China and Hong Kong, and which I loved because I've always loved cultures. But when I was young and I came, back to North America, I really felt like an outsider because I didn't know anybody and I didn't speak the language. And so where I channeled all of my energy was into sports. And I was a bigger kid at that time, haven't grown that much since I was a kid. I was one of these, I developed very quickly. And then when I met people after high school, like, hey, I saw them many years later, they're like, whoa, you haven't really changed that much. I was like, yeah, I stopped growing at that time, but I was big as a young kid. But I excelled in sports. And so everything that I did was sports. And I just was not interested in academics. I sat at the back of the class. I would be doodling and scribbling and not paying attention. And as soon as the bell would go, I'd be running out to play rugby or basketball or soccer or baseball or whatever, track and field, which I did very competitively. And then I went to Thailand when I was in grade 10, and I went with my father and my stepmother. And I had the biggest culture shock that I've probably ever had in my life, but it was positive. I was just blown away. All of a sudden, I felt like the world was huge, and I felt there was just something that I had a feeling inside of me that I had never had before. And I came back from that trip, and I pretty much stopped playing sports competitively. I did martial arts and other things back then, earlier on, but I pretty much stopped, and I still went to the gym and still stayed healthy. Like I still, even to this day, for me, exercise is very, very important. But I all of a sudden switched my focus from sports to arts. I became interested in poetry and reading and photography, music. And so something switched. I don't know exactly what it was, but I just became interested in, like, there's a lot more out there. And I went down that path. So that was the big switch for me. It was going, was that trip. And not long after, I convinced my parents when I was, not even 16, to allow my cousin, Sam, who's a few years older than I, to go to Vietnam, just the two of us. So I wasn't even 16 years old, and the two of us went to Vietnam for a month and a bit. And that was a life-changing experience, to see that area of the world and to be so young. And it was just, something I'm very thankful to have had that opportunity.
Yeah, very cool. It's not like something switched in you. It's like something awakened.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good way to look at that, or to look at that situation, because it felt like that it was certainly, I myself hadn't changed that much. I mean, I grew a beard for a period of time. when I came back, and as a way to kind of express myself. And I thought when I would finish high school, I had no interest in in really going to college. I thought I would just like travel. I just go to different places. I had no idea really what I wanted to do. But as I got closer to the end of high school, I recognized that no, I think what I want to do is get involved in business. And that's really what Sam and I then started to do, is to launch our first business. And, we've now built and sold multiple companies together over the years, and it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah. How fortuitous that the two of you went at such a young age for you to Vietnam together and bonded and brainstormed and strategized, planned for the future together. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel very fortunate, and, to have a cousin and business partner, where we get to share our successes together, but also we're there for each other when you encounter a tough day or a challenge. And certainly I think anyone in business has plenty of those, right? More than successes, even it often feels like. But yeah, it's been a great experience.
Yeah. Now there's something that you said a little while ago when we were talking about the studies that you did internally, and you just kind of mentioned it as an aside, like you asked, do you meditate or do you journal? Is there something that you do that helps you to get a higher performance or better throughput, better revenue or whatever? I'd like to know from your perspective.
For me personally?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Well, so number one by far is exercise. I've learned that about myself. I mean, I have sleep apnea, which if you look at me and see me in the flesh, you would think is very unlikely. My doctor several years ago, when I brought this up, he said, no, there's no way, you're slim, you're young, you don't have a big neck and all the typical signs and symptoms. The only thing that I had is that I snore. And he's like, no, you don't need to do the test. I said, no, I want to do the test. My stepfather, who he passed away from Alzheimer's several years later, but my mom in conversation, and because I said I always wake up and I feel tired, like I don't feel rested. And anyways, this whole conversation, so I said that to my doctor at that time, no, I want to go for a test. And he said, okay, fine, but like I'm sure you'll be negative. I went for the test and I was positive, like, yeah, you have sleep apnea. And had a whole bunch of sleep studies. It came back, I have something called idiopathic hypersomnia, which just essentially means doctors have no idea why I often feel tired. And so, you can try a CPAP machine, and most people that use that do feel much more rested in the morning. I use it, I don't feel that much more rested in the morning. The one thing that I have found that works, and I've tried some different supplements, and I wasn't really that interested in going the prescription route, although I did try one thing, Modafinil, but I just didn't find that it worked that well for me. But the number one thing that I find works is exercise in the morning. And so what's been interesting through kind of this whole COVID time is I used to go to the gym every morning early, but I stopped going to the gym mainly because my parents are elderly and I didn't want to take any chances. So I just started running. And now, 1 year later, I've run through rain and snow and, just pretty much running every day. And so for me, I do find running at the beginning of the day allows me to do, a few things, but a couple that stand out is, of course, I get the health benefits of it. So sweat and, cardiovascular, all that kind of good stuff. But I'm also learning because I'm listening to podcasts. And so, you often hear about people multitasking and how it's not really possible to multitask. Well, actually, this is one instance where I do truly multitask because I'm accomplishing, my health and exercise kind of requirements or what makes me feel good, but I'm also learning new things. And so I get my day started. I come back from that and I'm energized. I'm, inspired. I'm motivated. I've learned something new depending on what I've been listening to. But people often say, like, why don't you just listen to music? I can't just imagine working out or to a podcast. But for me, it's like, listen, yeah, if I was just pumping weights, maybe good music to really, get help me to feel more powerful or, full of energy. But I just love that opportunity to learn through interviews and podcasts while I'm exercising. So that's number one. A healthy diet, I think overall for me, like I have a smoothie in the morning that my wife makes, and we've been having this for many, many years, and we give it to both our daughters. So just healthy stuff in there. I have a salad for lunch. So I've definitely noticed keeping very simple, lunches and not eating too much helps me to stay focused throughout the day. Another big one that if people haven't tried, Stephan, but I would highly, highly encourage it. Everyone that I've given this to has found that it works really well is green, specifically matcha green tea, so organic matcha green tea. I find that creates a very nice level of energy and kind of mental clarity and focus for me personally throughout the day. And I've seen this now with many of the people that I've given it to or talked to about it. So those I would say are definitely the big ones. In addition to that, just learning, like always trying to learn new things. And so whether that's listening to other podcasts, which is probably my main source of content consumption these days, aside from books. So I do read a fair number of books, but podcast for me is a big one. I cut out media. I cut out watching the news and think newspapers many years ago. Yeah, and what's interesting is it's hard because I consider myself to be a worldly person. Like I really enjoy learning about the world and what's going on. But I found that media, and this again, I stopped doing this many years ago. I didn't lose anything. I don't feel like I know less about the world or less that's important about the world these days, because I can still learn about the world in other ways. But there's just so much negativity and just so much that you don't know whether it's true or not. And what I actually found, which is interesting, is that when I started to do that, I noticed that our business results actually improved. I don't know if there's any direct correlation, but I put my energy and focus into other things. I talk to friends who do consume a lot of media, and oftentimes they're much more negative. They're talking about this and that, and I just don't want to spend my time focused on those things when there's so much more that's positive out there that I could be spending my time on.
Yeah, that's great. I feel the same way. One thing that really helped me was I do a meditation every morning, the Anabacoa prayer, and it's a Kabbalistic prayer. I have just gotten so much value out of that first line of the prayer that's all about, well, here, I'll just grab it. It's all about the power to transform all chaos in the tree of knowledge, good and evil, into miracles in the world of the tree of life. So there's several levels to this. So first of all is disconnecting from the tree of knowledge, like you did, turning off the negative news, and connecting to the tree of life, which is all where the miracles and the synchronicities and intuition, that's where all that is. So that was step one. And then step two is recognizing that you have the power to transform the chaos of the tree of knowledge of good and evil into miracles, actual miracles in the world of tree of life. So I've been in that step two for a while now, and it's magic. It's amazing. So definitely get rid of the addiction to the media, to social media, to the news media. It does not elevate your consciousness. It doesn't connect you to the light. It just connects you to the darkness and the tree of knowledge and all the good and bad out there in the world, and it's just an endless, horrible rabbit hole.
Stephan, there's one other thing that I've done that, if you don't mind, I'd love to share, because I hope that it can make an impact with people. So one other thing that I've learned to do, or something that I've shifted over probably the last couple of years, which has had a pretty profound impact, is I started to really take notice when I had a negative feeling coming up like inside of me. And so I might be with one of my daughters or having breakfast, wherever I was, doesn't matter, but I would feel something negative. And before I would just really I would just kind of carry that negative baggage, and that would definitely impact my thought process. What I started to do is I asked myself, where is that, what caused that negative feeling? Where is that actually coming from? And what I'll often be able to trace it back to is, oh, Michael, it's just because you read an email from a client or from something, or you talk to somebody and you actually don't have a good vibe with that person. But what I do is I try and really trace, where is that negative feeling coming from? And I find that when I do that, I'm able then to very quickly process through it, so that I'm able to turn and go, oh, okay, that's why I'm feeling negative. Okay, here's how to solve it. And now I turn my state back to feeling very positive. But the other thing that's been helpful is, because I'm almost tracking this mentally about every negative thought that pops in and the source of it, then when it happens again, because most of these things do repeat, now I can actually dismiss it or process through it even faster. Like, oh yeah, it's because of this, no big deal. You've been fine since the last time that happened, no issue. And so that's been very powerful for me to be able to understand the source of just that negative feeling. Like I think we all have these things. It might not be something big, but you'll read something or hear something or you'll do something, and all of a sudden just inside of you, you have this feeling that doesn't feel good. And so often we don't stop to ask, like, where is that coming from? We just try and kind of keep going. But I actually have found that acknowledging it and really understanding the source of it allows you to process it and allows you to actually become a stronger person, so that when those things happen, you don't feel you're getting knocked down. You're not in that state of negativity as long, because you're now able to move past it much faster.
Oh, that is beautiful. I love that, and I hope our listener will take that on board and apply it in their lives. I think on the other side of it is also paying attention to your intuition in terms of things that just feel like maybe they're the right thing to do, or just like there's a little niggling tap on the shoulder, kind of metaphysically, and you feel like, I should reach out to this person, or I should mention this book to this person. Like, it's totally off topic, but
Yeah.
I should ask them how they're doing in their relationship or whatever. Like, do it. Just trust your intuition, because that is not coming from your subconscious. That's coming from elsewhere, coming from your higher power or whatever you believe, but it's definitely outside of you, I think.
And I think for those who might be listening who may not resonate 100% with the concept of higher power, I know some people, might not connect or grasp that right away. An example that I've found very tangible is, take just when you work with a client, and before you take on that client, you just don't have a great feeling about that client. Like you kind of think, oh, they're pushing really hard on price, or they just seem like they're going to be kind of a pain in the backside to work with. But then you still take that client on, most likely because you want the business and you want the money. And then as you're working with that client, of course, every single time you end up regretting that you took on that client, and the amount of money that you made from that engagement is no longer worth it. And you know it's not worth it, right? So these are just the kind of things that I find you're 100%, you are correct, Stephan, in my experience, is that your intuition is usually right. And very often, right, we don't accept it, we fight it, we put it off. And then usually when we do, we regret it. So learning to listen to your intuition and then acting on it, I think, are very powerful.
Yeah. Do we have time for a few more questions?
Let's do it.
All right. What are your favorite books? And they could be anything. It could be novels. It could be books about martial arts, or about basket weaving, or scuba diving. It doesn't matter. Just what would be your favorite books that you'd want our listener to go check out?
Well, so I'll tell you, the first book that I ever read was Shogun by James Clavell. Oh. And I literally went from never reading a book. Like, I used to use Cole's notes to get through school. So like the summary versions of books, because I never would read a full book. So that has a special place in my heart, also because I've spent quite a bit of time in Japan, and my wife is Japanese, and I just, before COVID, we would spend about 3 months there every year. So that for me was, I don't necessarily think that people need to read that book, but it has a special place in my heart. One that I read early on, which certainly does resonate even today, is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, as well as The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Those are, I think, very just great books, and ones that I would enjoy even reading again. There's a book called Straight Line Leadership by Dusan Jukovic. And it's leadership. Oftentimes when you hear leadership, you think about, teams and, executives and organizations. But this book is not about leadership of team. It's about leadership of self. And I found that to be a really powerful read. It's a book that I've gifted and share with clients over the years. Those are a few. There's lots. I love books. So
that's awesome.
I can tell looking at your bookshelf and my bookshelf that, we both enjoy reading.
Well, the irony is this bookshelf is mostly not my books, because we're staying at an Airbnb here in Tel Aviv. Now, the 3 books that are facing outward are mine. Those I actually co-authored or authored. And then there's a small part of one shelf up there that are my books that were either shipped to me by colleagues or friends, or that I brought over with me. But yeah, it's pretty much everybody asks or mentions this, like, wow, that's quite a lot of reading you're doing. No, those aren't my books. Funny. Yeah, but I love those recommendations that you gave. I'm curious, what would be a powerful takeaway that you got from The Alchemist?
Oh. Um, I mean, when I read books like The Alchemist, uh, it makes a lot of the day to day. I mean, it makes me think about how I'm spending my time. Right. So often I think we are just heads down, working on building the business and growing the business and, working with clients and doing what we're doing without stopping to think about like, why are we doing what we're doing? And books like the Alchemist or even Siddhartha often move my mind to, look at what is true happiness and fulfillment. What is it all about? And why am I doing, why am I working so hard if I'm not making sure that I am creating time to enjoy it? Or, when I look back when I'm older, will it matter if I've achieved this? Or, like what will really matter to me? That's the thing. What that, a book like that really does is it gives me greater perspective about how I'm spending my time. Like, I talk about this concept with clients that if you imagine that you have a triangle, what often entrepreneurs do is they will put at the top of the triangle, they'll put their business, and then they put their lifestyle below below the lifestyle. So you have business at the top and then lifestyle below. And then what they do is they have to make sacrifices at the lifestyle level to support the business at the top. And I often encourage in my own life, I do it the other way. So at the top of the triangle, I'll put my lifestyle. I'll get very clear about what's important for me as a person, as a member of community and all that other stuff, family and all the relationships. And then I put the business at the bottom, meaning that the business, now that's where I'll make the sacrifices. And sacrifices doesn't mean that you cut quality. It simply means you adjust the structure of what you need, but based on what you ultimately want to accomplish in your lifestyle. Because if you have a very successful business, but you're miserable at the top, it's all pointless, right? It's meaningless. So I think getting very clear about your lifestyle and your relationships and all the things that are actually meaningful for you as a person, and then putting your business below it, and then really being excited about how can you craft a business, how can you create a business that supports the lifestyle that you want. That's what those kind of books help me, and I think others maybe to get clearer on that top part of the lifestyle.
That's great. Okay, last question. It's a fast one. Did you get any benefit from modafinil? Because that is like a smart drug or nootropic that is kind of like the limitless drug. And yeah, I know you used it for sleep apnea, but
yeah,
I'm curious. Yeah,
I don't remember when I took it. I'm trying to think how long I took it for. It may have been a couple months. So maybe I need to take it for longer. I've never been that excited or into the idea of taking prescription drugs. I just try and always avoid that stuff as much as I can. Yeah. Always prefer kind of the more natural route, but I wanted to be open to trying. And I did some research on it, and I couldn't find that much negative about it. And it seemed like a lot of people in sports and business and students, use it. It seemed, and entrepreneurs seemed pretty well accepted. So I tried it, but I didn't notice anything different. And so, yeah, the two things that for anyone that's dealing with something like this, the two things that I've personally found the most helpful is number one, exercise right at the start, right at the beginning of the day. And then, probably, I do take some supplements. I don't know how much those help, but the organic, matcha green tea, I find really helpful as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much. This was really fun and enlightening as well. If somebody here listening wants to work with your firm, wants to learn more from you, where should we send them to?
Yeah, they can go to consultingsuccess.com is kind of home for everything. And we do have a guide if people are looking to kind of get deeper into the consulting world, a free guide. And you can get that by going to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint. And you will be added to some of those autoresponder emails that I mentioned that goes kind of deeper into my story and background. And I think you'll find it hopefully amusing, but also helpful. And of course, you can always unsubscribe if it doesn't resonate, but you'll get the guide regardless. It's about 47 pages long, so lots of value in there.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you, listener. Now take some action. There's some good stuff in this that will make a difference in your life, but you got to apply it.